So here is my E30, which I built from scratch. Now I don't mean like, oh, we put a gearbox in. From literal scratch. I bought this as a bare shell, and it took around 6 months to build. Now I put a story up on Instagram the other day, and I was asking everyone, how much do you think this has cost me from start to finish? And not only do we ask it on the Instagram, we asked everyone who works in the garage here. Now everyone has kind of seen me do this, so they had a little bit of a better knowledge than most of you guys did on Instagram. And on Instagram I had a huge array. I think the lowest price was like 5 grand, and someone said it cost me about 35 grand. So there's a big variance there on how much this cost me. So if you haven't been following this build, this is a E30 and it is a V8 swapped manual drift car, basically. And we've done everything ourselves. So we bought this as a rolling bare shell. All it had was a set of wheels, and well, it did have suspension on, but obviously we haven't used it. So how much did it cost me to get from this to this? Okay, so I was going to move it outside, but it's so bright out there and I just think it looked terrible on camera. So here we are, here is the E30, and this is how it's sitting now after 5 to 6 months of work. Still got a little bit more work to do. We still have to lower the car all the way around, so I had to pick up some new springs, but just don't look at it as a complete thing. But this is where it's pretty much done. It's driving. I'm happy with how it's sitting, and we've actually taken it to drift events. We need to do some tidying up. We're going to put a livery on it. We're going to put some side skirts on, but as a total running car, I'm happy with it. So now we're going to do the video of how much this cost. I'm just going to point something out, guys. A car with no oil leaks. I don't think this has ever happened in my entire life. This is the usual shit I have to deal with. No oil leaks. Crazy times. So here is the E30. Let's get into some prices. So I've got my laptop on me here and I have a spreadsheet of what everything costs. So let's try and start from the beginning. So I bought the E30 as a rolling shell and it looked like this. So it had absolutely nothing, no engine, no gearbox, no interior, no brakes, no absolutely nothing. It did have half of a cage. Obviously we've got the full cage now, but it did have half a cage. And it actually came with a load of stuff. It came with the wide body kit you see on now. So it's got a full wide body kit. It came with the Lexan windows. It came with the Kevlar roof. It came with the boot spoiler and the boot lid, but these are off an M3, so this wouldn't fit. So it came with a lot of stuff. And for the car and the wide body kit, I paid £3,000. Now that was good because cages nowadays cost around 2 to 3 grand. This is a strut tower to strut tower cage. Granted, we have to get another welder in and just finish it off, but nonetheless, a strut tower to strut tower cage would probably cost around 2.5, 3 grand. Best thing about this was it was actually a clean shell. So in my eyes, it was a free clean shell. Not to mention the fact it came with a full wide body kit, Lexan windows, Kevlar roof. That again would have cost at least probably around 2 grand to get all of those. So it would have been a massive mistake not to buy this car at 3 grand. So 3 grand is where we're at after buying the shell. Now the plan was to always put a V8 in this car, and the plan was always to put a 1UZ. Now there's a few ways you could have done that. A lot of people would just buy an engine and then make it work around that, make an ECU, make a wiring loom. I bought a whole running LS runner because I wanted to stay on the standard ECU and standard wiring and the standard key. So I got an LS400 from Copart with a 1UZ running with all the wiring that I needed for £700. Now I wanted to go with the 1UZ for 2 reasons. It's a cheap, reliable V8, and also there are companies in Poland who make the engine mounts to make that engine fit in this E30. And I bought those engine mounts for £178. Now before I go any further, I do actually want to say I've had a lot of sponsors help with this car, so there will be quite a few things that I got for free, and that's not just because they want to give them for free. Obviously with a YouTube channel you do have benefits of promotion and things like that, and I've worked a good relationship with some of these companies over the years, so I am going to be very transparent with what I got for free or what I got for cheap in terms of promo and sponsorship on my YouTube videos in return, so bear that in mind. And I just want to say again, thank you so much to all of these companies who have helped out. I actually wouldn't have be able to do it without you. So let's get into it. Now, to get this engine to actually work with those engine mounts, I actually had to get some, actual engine mounts, like the rubber mounts. So we got in touch with Powerflex. Powerflex have actually helped with tons of my cars in the past, and Powerflex supplied their E36 Black Series engine mounts for free. So huge thank you, Powerflex, you are the guys, but they would have cost me around £400. Now, obviously, all 1UZs come with automatic gearboxes, and for a drift car, you do not want a automatic gearbox. So the plan was to always put in a manual gearbox. Now, to get a manual gearbox to fit to an automatic engine, you have to buy an adapter plate and a custom clutch. Now, luckily there are a company out there, again in Poland, who make these, and I bought that adapter plate for £1,000. So that is the adapter plate to match the BMW gearbox up to the engine, and that came with the clutch and the release bearing and everything. So that was £1,000 on the adapter plate. And to mount up to the adapter plate, we actually got a BMW GS6 manual gearbox from a diesel E92, and that gearbox was second-hand and it cost me 150 quid. Now, obviously, this gearbox was never meant to be in this car, so I had to get a custom prop shaft made. And while I was getting the prop shaft made, we wanted to change the whole of the rear end as well, because this actually came with drums on the back instead of disc and pads, which is obviously not good when we want to be using our hydro handbrake. So we had to get some aftermarket arms, we had to get the trailing arms which had discs and pads, and then we had to get a custom prop shaft made through the car. So I had to get quite a lot of stuff, arms and things like that, and different prop shafts, and that all came to £690. Oh! And that's mainly because the actual trailing arms for the E30 with discs and pads are very sought after, because everyone wants to upgrade to disc and pads. So I reckon over half of that was just actually getting the trailing arms and the discs and everything for the back as well. I also had to buy two different prop shafts. I had to buy a prop shaft for an E30 and obviously a prop shaft for the gearbox that I've got, and then I had to pay someone the labour to actually make it into a prop shaft for the right kind of size as well. So that, I only just realised how expensive that was. God, 700 quid on a bit of metal. Now, this car did not come with any kind of fuel tank in it, but we obviously wasn't going to be using that because we had to run all new fuel lines, new fuel pumps. So we actually went with a fuel cell and a swirl pot. So in the boot here, we've actually got a fuel cell and a swirl pot, an array of pumps. So you have this pump down here, which feeds the fuel from here into here. So this fuel cell was £135 new, and that was just for the cell. And this swirl pot was second hand, and this was £200. Now, all fuel lines like this, you basically have to make them yourself, and you have to make them using AN fittings. These are AN fittings, and these are very expensive. These little things are probably around £15 each, just this. Luckily, this swirl pot came with quite a lot, so I actually had to buy some different connectors and things like that to make on these grey fuel lines and going into the lift pump. Now, just around 5 or 6 connectors of those, they were £63.23 for a handful of little connectors. Now, you actually have to make your fuel line as well. I think I got a few meters of fuel, maybe 5 meters of fuel line. As you can see, it runs through the car and then goes into the engine here. And just that fuel line on its own cost me £56. Cost me £56.98. And I need to add another £20 on just for these little aluminium spaces at the bottom there, because the fuel tank has like a low centre of gravity point, and you either have to cut a hole in the floor or lift the tank. So it cost me 20 quid just to get 4 aluminium spaces just to lift it up an inch. So let's move on to the steering. So E30s are an old car and the steering rack just isn't up to the task. So we've got a purple tag steering rack from E46 in there, and that was actually 60 quid. We also have to buy a coarser steering knuckle to modify, because the E30 ones are massive. So just down here we have a custom steering knuckle, which luckily my friends at Gaz have helped out on the labour with that massively, but just that steering knuckle alone was 35 quid. And we removed the power steering pump off the engine for space, and instead we have an electronic power steering pump just behind the seats there, and that's off an Astra Mark V. Now that just allows us to put it straight to the battery and not have anything off the engine. And that power steering pump was £48. Now, to get the power steering lines from the pump to the actual steering rack, we had to get some custom power steering lines, which are high pressure lines. And I had a few meters of these, this SAA, this kind of stuff here that goes through the car to the engine. Those lines were 60 quid. Now unfortunately my gearbox did not come with a shifter or the shifter unit, and apparently these are really hard to get hold of, so I have to get a new shifter and one of the ball joint bushes, and while I was there I actually got a gearbox mount as well. So for those two things they cost £110 for the shifter and the gearbox mount. So after going through this spreadsheet just quickly, it is quite interesting to see how things cost so much and how other things don't cost much at all. So for example, the shifter for the gearbox was almost just as much money as the actual gearbox. Now obviously this is a custom engine in a custom car, so pedals, you have to kind of put the pedals in it yourselves. So down here we actually have a pedal box. This is out of a Mark IV Supra, and you have to kind of wire all these in yourself. But now I actually ordered that along with a radiator, similar sort of thing. You've got to make the radiator fit. So the radiator and the pedal box came to £220. Now again, to actually plumb all the brakes in, I had to make every single line myself, because everything was either a custom fitting or it was taking a metric to an imperial, so I had to make all the lines myself with the hard lines, and then I actually got some braided lines made for some applications from the shop around the corner. So we've got a braided line going into the hydro, then we've got braided lines coming from the reservoirs, and we've got a braided line going into the clutch as well. So to plumb up all the brakes and all the clutch lines, it actually cost me £73, and that's with the lines and all the little fittings and stuff which I had to buy on eBay to make myself. Now with the E30 being an old car as well, we had to obviously upgrade all the calipers, all the pads and all the discs. So we've actually got the bigger calipers all the way around, so we can run vented discs, etc, etc, and all of the brakes, so the pads, the discs and the actual calipers, they actually set me back £120, which is not too bad considering I've got the discs, pads and the calipers. I'm not running amazing pads because we don't use too much brakes in drifting, so I'm not running any like trap pads or anything. We've got normal pads, obviously vented discs with the bigger calipers. That was 120 quid for my brakes. Now what's sitting on top of the brakes are my beautiful, beautiful wheels. Now I actually had to get some spacer adapters to fit these because the E30 is actually 4x100 and there are no wheels in 17-inch with decent fitment in 4x100. So I had to get some spacer adapters to 5x120. So the spacer adapters and my wheels cost me £700 in total. Now what attaches the wheels to the car are the suspension. Now thank you very much to Gaz at Coilovers. I've worked with Gaz, I've got a very good relationship with Gaz and we do a lot of work with each other now. Gaz actually supplied me their Gaz Gold two-way adjustable coilovers for free, so I cannot thank Gaz Shocks enough. Again, obviously they're one of the best suspension companies I've ever dealt with, and they're so personal, they're so friendly, and they're English based, and I've seen them make their shocks. I've seen them make my shocks from a piece of tube, all in their factory in Essex, and it's absolutely amazing to watch. So there'll be links on the screen to Gaz. So again, that would have probably cost me around 1,200 quid if I didn't have Gaz getting involved with the build. Now obviously being a drift car, a standard suspension setup obviously wasn't going to be good enough, so we have got a custom Wizards of lock kit for the E30, and that set me back 350 quid, and that's basically sending off the suspension to get cut and welded so we get more travel on the trap rod, and also to get lower arms, so we got 50mm wider arms as well, and that was 350 quid for the lock kit, which you might just be able to see, maybe not, might be a little bit dark, but you can just see my extended arms down there. So moving on to some things inside the engine bay, you can actually see a lovely alternator here. Now Ollie Evans has helped out massively with this build. Obviously Ollie Evans won Drift Masters last year. He's obviously probably the best drifter in the country, and he builds all of his cars himself. He actually makes alternators for, you know, builds like this, something that's drawing more power. When you start running things like electric power steering and stuff, the standard alternators on these cars can't hack it. So Ollie actually makes these alternators himself, and Ollie supplied me one of those for free, which again, other than drawing about 6 penises all over it, Ollie, thank you very much for that alternator, Ollie. The one thing I had to do was just buy a few different belts to make it fit. So I spent around £25 on belts to try to get the correct size in there. And speaking of belts as well, we obviously put a timing belt on the engine. It was cracking and it was literally on its way out. So I spent, it was around £210 for a full timing belt kit, water pump, everything. Now getting this side of the exhaust in, I had to actually make my own manifold along with our custom steering knuckle to actually get the engine to fit in the car, and doing that I actually ruined an O2 sensor, so I had to buy £30 for an O2 sensor. So we had to actually make our own throttle cable as well. So this is a universal throttle cable, and they were on eBay for about £23. Now obviously we've covered most things which make it a car, but to make it a car you have to actually be able to sit inside of that car. So we've obviously got 2 bucket seats in here, and we've actually got some obviously bucket seats mounts as well. Luckily, because my unit is inside a garage, they actually had these 2 seats upstairs, and luckily Ronnie said that I could have these seats. So I got these seats for nothing, and they actually came with the mounts as well, so it didn't cost me anything to put the seats in. Same with the harnesses that were upstairs just lying around in the box. So all the seating set up, I luckily didn't have to pay a penny. To make the car actually start, we had to do quite a little bit of wiring. Now the majority of the wiring I used for the car was just from the LS400, the ECU, the BCMs, the ignition, the immobilizer, everything like that is actually from the LS400. But what we had to do is we had to basically tie our own power and relays to the LS400 wiring. So we've got a battery in here, and collectively on the battery, the battery was just lying around as well in here. So with the battery box, the wiring and the relays, just to make that kind of power circuit work to the fuel pumps and to the power steering, we spent about 40 quid. Now I do only have, I don't have a dash in this car, I just have coolant temp there, and I do have oil pressure and voltage as well, which I'm going to install. So for those 3 gauges, it was £100. I've not installed the other 2 yet, but it was £100 for those gauges, and I will be putting them in. Now going back to the suspension, because we have got a true coilover setup on the rear, these cars from standard have a shock and a spring, and because we'll be going true coilover, we're putting a lot of pressure on the subframe where it was never actually meant to have pressure. So again, in Poland there is a company that sell a full strengthening kit for the E30s, so you might be able to see in there, you might not. You can actually see a load of different brackets and strengthening points which go all over the subframe, all over the diff, and connect all the rear arms and everything, just to really solid up that rear end. And for that strengthening kit, I actually paid £53 for the kit itself. Now another special mention, I want to do a massive thank you to a company called Resto Fab. He has an E30, and he's a welder. He makes load of stuff for the E30s and other BMWs himself, and he has helped massively, not only on the labour of actually welding these strengthening parts into the E30, but he's actually supplied more of his strengthening kits as well. So we've actually got a custom subframe made by Resto Fab at the back of the car to allow us to actually adjust camber and adjust toe, as the E30s don't have toe or camber adjustability from factory. Not only that, he's reinforced the subframe as well. And as well, Resto Fab has actually done the labour for our steering knuckle, and he's actually welded back in our cage as well. So Resto Fab, huge thank you. If you need any kind of BMW parts, or even just manufacturing parts or fabricating parts, or just some help welding or whatever, he's the man to go. Harry, you're a legend. Now this car sounds absolutely insane, and that's because we've got a full custom exhaust from Zorseworks. Now again, this is another huge shout out to a massive company who's not only helped me on this build, but who's helped me on every single build since I've probably started my YouTube channel. Zorseworks has been, I've been working with Zorseworks for around 5 years now. He's done every single exhaust on every single car I've ever had, and some of them have been an absolute nightmare. So Zorseworks, again, it's one of those sponsorships who's got involved with the car, and he actually didn't charge me a thing to do the exhaust, and that's just because we've been working with each other for so long. And he actually says from our videos he gets more custom than he gets way more custom than what it would cost him to make me the exhaust. So for him it's beneficial because we do a video, and obviously he gets customers from that, and it helps him, it helps me, it helps you guys get a video. So this is the world of business. So huge thank you to Zorseworks. I actually didn't pay a single penny for my exhaust for the E30. Other than the fuel it cost me to go up there and take it up there, he's around 5 hours away, but I'm not going to account that into it. And just to finish the way the car looks, obviously the bonnet and the wide arch kit, they came with the car. But the one thing it didn't come with was a windscreen and a bonnet. Did I say bonnet? I meant bumper and a bonnet. So we got the bonnet for £150. This is a double skinned fiberglass. Is it Jeff Steel? Can't remember. But that's second hand. And it cost us 200 quid to get the windscreen fitted. That was the windscreen, the rubber, and the actual plastic as well. Actually, something that I've just done just now. I actually just put a new steering wheel on because the old one was crap. And we've actually got a dash there in the well. For the rules of my drifting thing that I do, we have to have a dash in the car. So I actually got the dash for free because it's cracked and it's just obviously not in good condition. But I didn't care. A dash is a dash. As long as I can get the rules, I'm okay. So the dash cost me nothing. And the steering wheel cost me 60 quid. And one of the last things we did was we changed all of the bushes in the car. So every single bush has been changed. There's not one single original rubber bush in the car. They have all been replaced with rubber ones, or they have all been upgraded to Powerflex. So collectively, all the other bushes that cost, they came to £180 for the bushes, because a lot of them came with the Wizard Lock kit, or I had to just, you know, buy one-off bushes here and there. So all of the bushes that I had to change, that was an extra £180. And obviously the car did not come in this colour. This is a Porsche Racing Yellow. And one of my best friends, Kuba, actually owns a paint shop. He basically just charged me the cost of the materials for the paint. And this was a 2K paint job. So it took us around a day to do, because obviously we're not flattening and basting and priming the whole car. It's a 2K flat colour. They just charged me the cost of the materials, and that came to £80 for the paint. And that is pretty much it. I'm going to add on another £200 just for little bits, little fittings, maybe little washers that I needed, special washers that I needed, special bolts that I needed, special riv nuts that I needed, maybe just some little things like that. I've added on collectively around £200. So that should take us to the end of the build. But before we do, I just want to say a quick special thank you to Funk Motorsports for supplying some of the heat shielding that we needed. How much did it cost me start to finish to make this E30 from basically a bare shell? And if my calculations are correct, it should be £9,599.21. So I think a lot of people here in the garage guessed between 9 and 11 grand. So I think the people in the garage kind of knew what things cost. But this was me trying to do it mostly on a budget as well. This was not me buying the most expensive thing. This was me trying to find most things secondhand. There's things I did not cheap out on, and that was mainly things like clutch related. Anything kind of gearbox clutch related, I didn't massively want to cheap out on, because anything to work on this car is an engine out job. But other things, I try to save as much money as possible wherever I could. Our final bill is £9,599.21 to have a manual swapped V8 wide body E30. Now that is definitely not what this car is worth to me, because this has been 6 months of agonizing stress and hard work. So if someone actually wanted to put a price tag on this, it would be more than double that, and even more, because my time is very important to me. But the reason I wanted to do this was because I had a car which meant so much to me at the end, and this car means so much to me. I've done absolutely everything myself, and the main part of that is just making things fab up. When you're buying crash cars and crash rebuild stuff and you're replacing stuff, it's easy because you're replacing, the bolts are already there, the threads are already there, the metal's already there. When you're making something like this, you have to make every single thing yourself. And for someone who hasn't done anything like this before, this was really tough for me, but we've done it. I proved so many people wrong in the comments, and I'm very, very happy about that. So here is my £9,599.28 V8 swap manual wide body E30. Thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.